I've been to Mountaintop by Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you very kindly, my friends, as I listened to Ralph Abernathy and his eloquent and generous introduction and then thought about myself. I wondered who he was talking about. It's always good to have your closest friend and associate to say something good about you. And Ralph Abernathy is the best friend that I have in the world. I'm delighted to see each of you here tonight in spite of a storm warning. You reveal that you are determined to go on anyhow. Something is happening in Memphis. Something is happening in our world. And you know, if I were standing at the beginning of time with the possibility of talking a kind of general and panoramic view of the whole of human history up to now, and the Almighty said to me, Martin Luther King, which age would you like to live in? I would take my mental flight by Egypt, and I would watch God's children in their magnificent trek from the dark dungeons of Egypt through, or rather across the Red Sea, through the wilderness, on toward the promised land. And in spite of its magnificence, I wouldn't stop there. I would move on by Greece and take my mind to Mount Olympus, and I would see Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Euripides, and Aristophanes assembled around the Parthenon, and I will watch them around the Parthenon as they discussed the great and internal issues of reality. But I wouldn't stop there. I would go on even to a great heyday of the Roman Empire, and I would see developments around there through various emperors and leaders, but I wouldn't stop there. I would even come up to the day of the Renaissance and get a quick picture of all that the Renaissance did for the cultural and aesthetic life of man, but I wouldn't stop there. I would even go on by the way that the man for whom I named had his habitat, and I would watch Martin Luther as he tacked his 95 Theses on the door at the Church of Wittenberg, but I wouldn't stop there. I would come on up even to 1863 and watch a vacillating president by the name of Abraham Lincoln finally come to the conclusion that he had to sign the Emancipation Proclamation, but I wouldn't stop there. I would even come up to the early 30s and see a man grappling with the problems of the bankruptcy of his nation, and come with an eloquent cry that we have nothing to fear but fear itself, but I wouldn't stop there. Strangely enough, I would turn to the Almighty and say, if you allow me to live just a few years in the second half of the 20th century, I will be happy. Now, that's a strange statement to make, because the world is all messed up, the nation is sick, trouble is in the land, confusion all around. That's a strange statement, but I know, somehow, that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. And I see God working in this period of the 20th century in a way that men, in some strange way, are responding. Something is happening in our world. The masses of people are rising up, and wherever they are assembled today, whether they are in Johannesburg, where in Johannesburg, uh, Johannesburg, South Africa, Nairobi, Kenya, X, X, Extra, Ghana, New York City, Atlanta, Georgia, Jackson, Mississippi, or Memphis, Tennessee. The cry is always the same. We want to be free. And another reason that I'm happy to live in this period is that we have been forced to the point where we are going to have to grapple with the problems that men have been trying to grapple with through history. But the demands didn't force them to do it. Survival demands that we grapple with them. Men, for years now, have been talking about war and peace. But now, no longer can they just talk about it. It is no longer a choice between violence and non-violence in this world. It's non-violence or non-existence. That is where we are today. That is where we are today. And also in the human rights revolution, if something isn't done, and done in a hurry to bring the colored peoples of the world out of their long years of poverty, their long years of hurt and neglect, and the whole world is doomed. Now I'm just happy that God has allowed me to live in this period to see what is unfolding, and I'm happy that He's allowed me to be in Memphis. I can remember when Negroes were just going around as Ralph has said, so often scratching where they didn't itch and laughing when they were not tickled. But the day is all over. We mean business now, and we are determined to gain our rightful place in God's world. And that's all this whole thing is about. We aren't engaged in any negative protest and in any negative arguments with anybody. We're saying that we are determined to be men. We are determined to be people. We are saying that we are God's children. And that we are God's children. We don't have to live that we are forced to live. Now what does all of this mean in this great period of history? It means that we've got to stay together. We've got to stay together and maintain united. You know, whenever Pharaoh wanted to prolong the period of slavery in Egypt, he had a favorite formula for doing it. What was that? We kept the slaves fighting among themselves. But whenever the slaves get together, something happens in Pharaoh's court, and he cannot hold the slaves in slavery. When the slaves get together, that's the beginning of getting out of slavery. Now let us maintain unity. Now let us maintain unity. Secondly, let us keep the issues where they are. The issue is injustice. The issue is the refusal of Memphis to be fair and honest in its dealing with its public servants, who happen to be sanitation workers. Now we've got to keep attention on that. That's always the problem with a little violence. You know what happened the other day, and the press dealt only with the window breaking. I read the articles. They very seldom got around to mentioning the fact that 1,300 sanitation workers are on strike, and that Memphis is not being fair to them, and that Mayor Loeb is in dire need of a doctor. They didn't get around to that. Now we are going to march again, and we've got to march again in order to put the issue where it is supposed to be, and force everybody to see that there are 1,300 of God's children here suffering, sometimes going hungry, going through dark and dreary nights, wondering how this thing is going to come out. That's the issue, and we've got to say to the nation, we know how it's coming out, for when people get caught up with that which is right and they are willing to sacrifice for it, there is no stopping point short of victory.